Good morning and welcome to the main May meeting of the Board of Trustees. We are especially happy to be here at Fort Kent so that we appreciate the drive that folks from Fort Kent make all the time to get to other parts of the state. And it was a beautiful, beautiful, phenomenal ride here, just stunningly beautiful, capped off by a lovely evening last night and a dinner appropriate for Fort Kent and the Arcadian history, and it was just great. So thank you, President Hadeen and your team. It's just been we feel very welcome. And as long a drive as it is, it's beautiful. So thank you. I'm going to switch the agenda just a little bit and do some reports first before we move into our action items to try to keep them all together. Let me just make sure that we have Lisa Marchese online. Good. Hi, Lisa. And Donna Loring will be joining us later. So Valerie Landry is out of state and unable to be here today. So we're sorry to miss her. This is a very important meeting. Obviously, it's when we review the budget that has been the work and deliberation of the FFT committee, the executive committee, extraordinary work that's gone on to create a wonderfully balanced budget for nobody's mentioned this, but for the first time since 2014. So we'll have that discussion a bit later. And I want to thank Chair Roger Cates and the FFT committee for all their work to get us to this point with, of course, Ryan and his team. I wanted to let you know, we have talked forever about making the board meetings as efficient and effective as possible. We know that we ask the presidents to tighten their belts, to look at efficiencies. This budget brings efficiencies forward, which is very impressive. We need to do the same. And so we will be doing a survey of the board and the presidents and the chancellor and vice chancellors. Quick survey that will go out next week, asking you for some input about how we can be more efficient and effective, how these board meetings can be as effective as they possibly can be. We'd ask for your response, your candid response. There'll be a deadline. I forget what it is, but it will go out. It will go out soon, and really we appreciate it. The board will have additional questions about a self-assessment of the board's own efficacy and efforts to make sure that we take a look at ourselves and our ability to do our job. So that will go out pretty quickly. And I also wanted to mention that we are unfortunately without a student trustee. Divya Singram, who just graduated from the law school, resigned in January to take an incredible opportunity for an internship. But we've had no student trustee since then. The student trustee law that was enacted met some glitches, so we don't yet have the new student trustees appointed. So we've asked as a temporary sort of solution to make sure that we have a student voice at the table. We've asked the student representatives to have a student rep at each of our meetings until we get official student trustees appointed through the governor and legislature. And I'm pleased that Alec Brook from UMPI is here today. Welcome. So we're hopeful it will get our student rep, but we're very pleased to have the student reps have been terrific in helping out, filling the void. I also want to just alert you that we have from the chancellor and his team a fundraising report that we asked for, and it didn't have a home for review. So I've been chatting with Chair Emily Kane, and we've agreed that it would be appropriate to add it to the Strategic Planning Committee. So that will be front and center on the agenda to begin to look at more aggressive fundraising for the system with particular attention to the smaller campuses and finding ways to help them. So thank you, Emily, for taking that on. We do have, you probably all know that Kayla Flewelling stepped in as the interim clerk, took on a big job, just jumped in and did it for a year. It's tough work, and we are deeply appreciative. She's here today because our clerk, Beth Strickland, is at the University of Maryland, where her twins are graduating from college. So good reason not to be here. And Kayla, once again, rose to the occasion. And we wanted to recognize her. She's been a great partner and a great help to this board. And we heard through the grapevine that she likes to go to campus bookstores and buy kitchen guy things, buy the sort of things that Roger also buys and T-shirts. So we thought it would be appropriate to provide this highly sophisticated and lovely gift to recognize Kayla's wonderful contributions from the board. No, come on. So she's got the whole system now.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's really, and thank you for being here. So all good. I think I've lost my way, but that's so unusual. I guess we are now at the point of the round robins. So I would ask the presidents to step up and let us know what's happening. And I'll start with President Rice.
The chair always ends up starting with President Rice. I should know that this will happen. Yeah, it's been a very busy but very wonderful end of the academic year and beginning of the summer. So let me start with some good news that we got. I know as many other institutions did, we had about $300,000 of MEIF SCI awards go to 3 different faculty members, 2 of whom are brand new faculty members at the institution. One, Lee Belair, it's a joint with MEIF with UMA for the MLT program, and then Chunzhen Wang is another recipient who's gotten so many awards over the years and does such remarkable work. So just so great that our science and healthcare faculty receive these awards right, in May, right after graduation. So it was a great kind of post-commencement announcement. In regards to the work the institution is doing this summer, I'm really pleased that we already have over 1,200 students enrolled for our first summer session. We'll have another summer session with another over 1,000 students in that, which will bring us to historically high rates of summer enrollments, which I think is fascinating. I'm thrilled to have the summer enrollments, to be honest, but it's fascinating that it's another sign that students are increasingly looking to do work 12 months a year. In the old days, when I first started at UMPI 25 years ago, our summer enrollments were probably a fifth of a regular session enrollment, right? So summer, you'd maybe have 20% of the head count or credit hour generation. We're now at like 80%. So that gap closes year over year over students taking credit hours, and that credit hour generation gets closer and closer, all 3 of those periods. So I would just use that as something I know we're all looking at as presidents, those changing enrollment trends that are so important to our students wherever they are. And then the last thing I'd mention is our graduation, and Trustee Kane is here, so who participated in our graduation. We watched over 500 graduates at that, well, about 160 March, but we had over 500 graduates, again, the largest graduating class we've ever seen at the institution. And it was just a great event, both because we had a great commencement speaker, Kathy Pelletier, and Trustee Kane gave some just unparalleled, I would say, remarks having to do with full totality and the lack thereof and the difference betwixt, which were so well received by everybody. And we marched off to, we both brought, yeah, because, it was May the 4th. So, so we marched, we processed off because May the 4th is unofficial Star Wars Day. Exactly. So we all had lightsabers. The entire platform party marched off to the tune of Anatole Wick played the Star Wars March. And then we had probably the loudest applause I've ever heard in an auditorium. And then they marched under a kind of a what do you call that?
We after Ray stepped out from behind the podium and put on his Ken/Luke Hamill Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker wig.
Which I would have worn, but I couldn't find it. So
And
you're
the Leia wig, which may or may not be under this table. Because I thought that he was going to bring his, but I'm not going to wear mine without his. Doesn't work that way. But what
I
was
couldn't
really
find-
amazing, what you have to know, and if you haven't seen the video, it's worth it, is Ray stepped out from behind the podium and talked to the students, not only about how it was Star Wars Day, which they loved, but how they were the force for good. And you could just see on their faces the excitement. To the very end, we marched out to the Star Wars theme and we created an archway. All the stage party had lightsabers and we created an archway and they processed out to the Star Wars music, the faculty and the students. And it was just awesome. So, and Kathy Pelletier was great. And inadvertently, we all talked about space that day, not planned. So it was really special.
right. And
And
not,
may the force be with you.
may the force be with you all. So that's the news from UMPI.
Yeah.
Da, 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 da. Beat that, President
No.
Softly.
Come on, slowly.
All right, just give me 1 minute and I'm all over.
You want the layaway?
We're deeply disappointed that we don't have strong relationships between the board and the president.
I think you should go next to President McDonald and all right, no. So let me just say that at the University of Maine School of Law, we take graduation very seriously. And so we graduated 85 of the smartest and most serious people that the state of Maine has ever put on a stage. I'm really struggling with this because Trustee Kane in a Leia wig has killed me. I can understand Ray, but the other, all right, so let me. Oh, my God. All right, so.
We have officially lost control.
That's true. So let me get back to Maine law where everything is very serious all the time. And so let me just tell you that we graduated 85 brilliant, smart, and very serious people. There was no laughter in Merrill Auditorium at all, except when I told them about my torts professor, who in my first year of law school asked me a question, cold called me. I obviously got the wrong answer. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a quarter, said, "Ms. Ingalls, call your mother and tell her you will never be a lawyer." There was a little laughter at that one, although I'm still sobbing about it and I've been in therapy for quite some time. So let me tell you, however.
To everybody.
He did. He did. We had words for that, but we don't say them publicly. So let me tell you about those who spoke at the very serious University of Maine School of Law graduation. It was an incredible group of people. We kicked it off with the chancellor, who every time he speaks to law students, they say to me afterwards, "I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, but I heard that and now I'm really," and it was amazing. Followed up by Trustee Alexander, who was just lovely and made it clear that the trustees support the law school and what these young, serious students are doing is very important in the world. Followed by our student speaker, who was so inspiring that the entire Merrill Auditorium was on their feet twice to cheer for her. She was just amazing. Then followed by Mr. Greg Powell, who was our Roth alumnus recipient, who talked about being open to the randomness of life and being ready for opportunities when they come to you. He was brilliant. And then Peter Mills, who is the chair of our fundraising foundation, talked about how important it is for all of us to be careful about the people around us who will hyper-regulate and be authoritarian. And he did it in such an interesting fashion. The students were still talking about it afterwards. So it was a serious and very important event for everyone who was there. And my hair looked just like it does now, which doesn't, rain. We're not going to talk about my hair. So let me also say that when those students walked across the stage and picked up their diplomas, 70% of them had jobs already. 70% of the graduating class had jobs before they've even taken the bar exam. It is the highest number of our graduates with jobs in decades, as far as we can find. And it was an extraordinary experience, lots of awards, lots of wonderful things. I will also say, starting again with the applications, Maine Law is looking at unprecedented numbers of students who have already deposited, sufficient that we're asking the chancellor to come up with a new building for us. No. We'll just take the ocean side, Chancellor. We're actually, if the class stays, if we don't have the melt, and we all know that we are looking very carefully at the melt, if we do not have a serious melt, we are going to have to split our final remaining unsplit 1L class, because we will have so many wonderful students coming in their 1L year, and it will be a very serious year for everyone. Thank you very much.
President Edmondson.
Thank you. I always appreciate the roundtable as an opportunity to tell the board and share good things that are happening at the university that you may not otherwise know. But today I would be remiss if I didn't say there's also some hard news that I share. So it's been a difficult year at USM. We've had budget restrictions. We've had parking challenges, and there are a lot of things going on, but this past week has been particularly challenging as we reorganized the university and 5 positions were eliminated. I do want to make it clear, though, that those units where that work was happening, that work continues on. So our director for advising position was eliminated. That's being reorganized. And that person, that unit, our advising unit, our professional advisors will be reporting to our vice president for enrollment management. Our director of graduate studies was eliminated. That does not mean that we are getting rid of our graduate studies programs. Instead, that unit reports to our associate vice provost, Dominic Veraclaw. And we have some student affairs organizations that are being reorganized. We aren't eliminating our programs. So I do want to make sure that's clear. There were 8 students coming into the Russell Scholars Program. Those students have already been reassigned to a new living learning community. And so I do want to thank the University of Southern Maine as a whole for seeing us through a difficult year. We're on track to end, fingers crossed, on track to end this year with a balanced budget that does not rely on reserves or CARES Act funding. And so that there are many good things ahead for us, but it has been a really difficult week. I want to acknowledge that. In spite of that, we did have 1,635 students who crossed the stage at commencement. Joe Wishcamper was given an honorary degree, and he was so proud of that. In fact, I was at his house for dinner last week, and he was still wearing, well, I don't think he wore it the whole time, but he did have his hood on for dinner, which was wonderful. And I have a terrific picture of that. Roger Cates joined us and spoke to our students, which was really terrific. And Roger knows many of our students here at our events, and you've come to my class. And so it's nice that you have that connection with USM. So I thank you for that. Tom Karen was our commencement speaker. He's a sports broadcaster who comes from Lewiston. And so he made some really nice connections to the area as well. And there were some nice milestones this year. There were we celebrated the 50-year anniversary of WMPG, which is our radio station. It's an incredible radio station. If you turn it on at any time, you never know what you're going to hear. It is one of the most eclectic radio stations I think I've ever heard. Our School of Business celebrated 100 years, so we had a nice centennial celebration for that. And our Department of Geography and Anthropology celebrated 50 years. And so the University of Southern Maine has been here for a long time, not here in Fort Kent, in Southern Maine for a long, long time. We're going to be in Southern Maine for a long time ahead, and we're getting through some challenges that will position us much better for the future. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. President Hadid.
Good morning, everybody. First, I'd like to start off in April, we had our Scholar Symposium, and the theme this year was One Health, and the keynote speaker was Dr. Tristan Burgess, who is the co-founder of the Center for Wildlife Studies. And we also had 42 student poster presentations that lined the walls in our gym and the sports center. And it was just the most amazing morning and afternoon reviewing and visiting with all the students and learning about their research and their studies that they had participated in. Also, as President Rice was mentioning, we also have received a Maine Economic Improvement Fund grant, and the PI, Ned Rupert Nason, is he here? He was here yesterday. Is he here? There's Ned. Look at him. Approximately 180,000. The co-PI is Libin Lewis, who's right at the table here, a faculty rep. Also, Stephanie Landry, senior personnel, another faculty member in forestry. And here's the title: Closing Maine's Circular Bioeconomy. Bioeconomy. That was a big word today. Repurposing biochar residues as soil amendments to promote carbon storage and tree growth. You can see why I struggled right from the beginning, because all those words together, I'm not really sure what that's all about, but it sounds super exciting. I'm really glad the 3 faculty are engaged in that. So congratulations to them. During our commencement ceremony, we recognized John Martin as our 2024 Distinguished Service Award honoree. And one piece to point out that is really significant to us being in Northern Maine right now is that he was very intimately, actively involved in the legislature's passage of the Allagash Wilderness Waterway statute in 1966, which established the Allagash as America's first federally protected state-managed wild river. So how neat to be talking about that today when you're here in Northern Maine. Also, our commencement speaker was Catherine Olmsted, and she received an honorary degree from us in 2021, which of course was during the pandemic. And so therefore her commencement speech was online. So we invited her back to actually be able to present to the students and to the audience. And it was incredible. She interviewed students in advance and incorporated their quotes and their messaging back to them and to the audience. And it was really very compelling. She has many accomplishments. One of them to talk about right now is as the editor of Echoes Rediscovering Community, a quarterly journal highlighting the rural culture based in Northern Maine for 30 years to celebrate the quality of life in Aroostook County. Another piece to celebrate while you're here in Aroostook County with us during this Board of Trustees meeting. Also like to acknowledge Trustee Kelly Martin, who also gave some inspiring, not serious words, no, to our students. And we always appreciate having Kelly with us on the stage. And yesterday, during this past weekend here in Fort Kent, it was the Loggers Fest, and there was a big parade yesterday. And of course, UMFK, we all walked I think I ended up with 13,000 steps yesterday morning, participating in that parade, and that was super exciting. And finally, I would like to thank the UMFK community for obviously preparing and creating a really welcoming environment for all of you to be attending the Board of Trustees meeting yesterday and today. Specifically thanking the facility staff, also the nursing staff and nursing students who presented yesterday and provided the tours for you. And then last, Lisa Roy, Executive Assistant to the President. Lisa, will you please stand? She's right over there. She, behind the scenes, like worked magic to pull so many of these pieces together, and so grateful for her commitment to this university. So welcome, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for arranging Summer to come. Just special for this
Just
meeting.
in time.
Let me turn to President Cushman.
All right. Thank you. We have some good news from our dental program. The expanded function dental assistant cohort completed their board exam, and we had a 100% pass rate this year. 16 dental health professionals are now EFDA eligible. And we held the UMA Faculty Institute on May 13th. This focuses on educational technologies. It's sponsored by UMA and free to everyone in the system. There were 300 attendees, faculty, staff, and students across the system. Members from all UMS campuses attended. We hosted national experts from EAB for the keynote on 6 drivers for student success, integrating AI practice in teaching and learning, and leveraging this emerging technology in the classroom. Sessions were recorded and it was offered in multiple modalities so folks could attend synchronous sessions. And finally, since this is commencement season, a very serious season, and since UMA's mission is to transform the lives of the least resourced, I would like to spotlight one of our UMA graduates, Allie Winship, who was our student speaker at commencement. Raised on a farm in Ogden, Maine, Allie is a vet tech major from UMA's Bangor campus who graduated summa cum laude. Her love for animals is no surprise. She spent her childhood raising cattle and horses, as well as growing hay and potatoes. She credits her family and farm life for the character, compassion, and work ethic she embodies today. It has long been Allie's dream to enter a career in veterinary medicine and change lives big and small. Allie worked at a veterinary clinic since childhood, which prepared her well for the challenges of putting herself through college. I'm delighted to say that Allie has already been hired at a large vet clinic in Bangor.
Great, great. Mr. McDonough.
So we too had a graduation. The only outdoor graduation in the system, I might say, with the magnificent Western Maine mountains in the background. We had 300 students, graduate and undergraduate students that crossed the stage. But interestingly, there were more than 3,500 people in the amphitheater, which means that every student had at least more than 10 people with them. And for first generation, which is many of our students, this is a really big deal. And we saw that. We had Monica Wood, who is the author from, grew up in Western Maine and actually took a course at this university 50 years ago when her mother passed away. She had to finish up at UMF, and she did that. And 50 years later, we gave her the degree. We also had Owen McCarthy, the chancellor, there. Many brilliant words were spoken, but the best thing about them was that they were all brief. And those were the instructions, and everybody followed. And this was a graduation that finished in under 2 hours.
Wow.
So in other news, we've been doing quite a bit of work on the faculty and in artificial intelligence, and we have a group of faculty that will be working through the summer on this. We're in the early stages, but how artificial intelligence will be used in the classroom is a issue that we're taking very seriously. The other thing I would say is, we've had some success in fundraising. The Lennox Foundation just gave us $100,000 to complete the playground for the early child care and education center. And we had the Mariah Studio, which is a group that gives money for art and therapy. They gave 3 scholarships for our graduate counseling program. And finally, I'd like to talk about the Teachers of the Year. We've had 4 of our graduates become Teachers of the Year one in Androscoggin County, one in Kennebec County, one in Lincoln County, and one in Waldo County. It's kind of a reminder that teacher preparation really matters. This university punches above its weight in that area, and this is a pipeline into our universities and into Maine's future. And it's something that I think the system as a whole has to take very seriously, how we prepare teachers for pre-K to 12. So thank you.
Thank you. President Farini Mundy.
Thank you. So we had 4 commencements. That means I get like 40 minutes to talk. No wigs involved, as far as I know.
Only if you have,
Um,
yeah, special effects, you get more time.
Yeah, right. Just a couple of highlights, 502 graduate degree and certificate awardees crossed the stage on Friday night at the Alfond. And then in the two ceremonies on Saturday for undergraduates, we had 1,617 students. The Alfond Arena was filled for all of these events. We did individual hooding for every master's student and for every PhD student. So we were more than 2 hours. But fantastic ceremonies. I want to thank trustees Riley, Loring, and Flood. And I want to say a bit about Machias too. 45 students graduating at the University of Maine at Machias, and just a lovely, very personalized ceremony for UMaine Machias that fits the institution. Honorary degrees at UMaine to Raj and Neera Singh, who are alums that have had extraordinary careers in the tech industry, and they were thrilled and they brought their family, and we had a wonderful time with them. So great events for commencement, and thanks to all who were a part of it. A couple of other notable notions, maybe a first, but the Bernard Lown coin, which is a part of the American Innovation $1 coin series, was announced and released last week. Bernard Lown is an alum of the University of Maine, Dr. Bernard Lown. He is a Lewiston native, has a bachelor's degree had a bachelor's degree class of 42 from the University of Maine. He invented the direct current defibrillator and was also the winner of the 1985 Nobel Peace Prize. A very, very distinguished alumnus. And so this dollar coin is out, and that came through the governor's office as a nomination. So we're very excited to have that available. Two other just notable grants that have come in the past few weeks. First of all, EPSCoR, which is a federal program to support states that are meant to develop capacity for more federal funding. And the EPSCoR grant that came in is an $8 million grant over 4 years, led by UMaine. And the partners are GMRI, the Gulf of Maine Research Institute, MMSA, the Maine Math and Science Alliance, the University of Southern Maine, the University of Maine at Fort Kent, and I think some of the folks involved in the Fort Kent grant are here, and Southern Maine Community College. So it's a partnership among several institutions in the state meant to raise capacity in STEM research generally. And also there's a very strong student focus there, as well as an early career faculty focus. And then at the University of Maine at Machias, who in partnership with the Zillman Art Museum applied to the National Endowment for the Arts, they've received a $60,000 grant in the Our Town series for the development of a sculpture that will be based in the park in the town of Machias to promote issues that have to do with climate change and blueberry production. It's really creative and interesting and very exciting for the community to be able to work together with the university on that grant. Finally, largest 3D printer, yet the largest 3D printer, unveiled at the Advanced Structures and Composite Center in the past few weeks. It's the largest polymer 3D printer in the world. It is the unveiling of really Factory of the Future 1.0, the beginning stages of this expansion that we're doing to be a leader in additive manufacturing with 3D printing and with AI together. And that was a big event for us with Department of Defense, high-level officials. The Undersecretary of Defense and Undersecretary of Defense was with us. So we're excited. And finally, the university has kicked off something that we're calling the Strategic Re-envisioning Initiative, which will be a 8 or 9 month process to take a step back in our university, engage the community widely to look at where we want to be in the future, who we want to be as a university, and how to move in that direction in ways that also are financially sound and that will sustain the university into a future. So the big meetings and conversations and committees and so forth have been launched and are being launched right now on that.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all. Great stuff. I do apologize. We did not have public comment because we had no one sign up for public comment, but I wanted to make that clear in the record. As this discussion makes really clear, there's an awfully lot of wonderful things happening in the university. So it's a great segue to talk about next steps. And as you know, each year we convene a Chancellor's Review Committee to do our due diligence to review the Chancellor's performance. The most important job, we have two critically important jobs as boards. One is the appointment of the most effective Chancellor we can find. Two is the budget, and today's a big day. When we reflect on the work that's been done, as each of these round robins shows us, it's been an incredible couple of years, several years. The Harold Alfond grant, I think is now, the chancellor has succeeded in getting even more money through the Harold Alfond grant and working closely with President Farini Mundy. That's now over $300 million. And when you add the match requirement that we are meeting, that's $500 million of investment in this university. And as we heard from the graduation, we are out there producing Maine's workforce. It's just exciting stuff. Unified accreditation, and obviously we've talked about that a lot, a really important initiative to make sure we can maintain and sustain the campuses throughout the system. There's clearly a great team, as evidenced by this discussion, a great group of people working collaboratively toward the future of this university in Maine. More focus on online education that's showing results, the first strategic plan, the first balanced budget since 2014, no small feats. So as the Chancellor Review Committee met, and we met, of course, this is a personnel discussion, we met an executive session with the board. It's clear that this is exciting stuff, that the Chancellor is moving this organization in a very positive way, and that there's work to do, that the balanced budget is not sustained financing for the future. We have to keep working on that. There's so much more opportunity with CBE and online, so much opportunity with a unified catalog so students can take classes as appropriate any place in our system. More on marketing, more on enrollment. There's so much to do. So it is clear that the board has in Chancellor Malloy a leader who can keep moving this system forward. And so given the interest in time, we could talk about you forever. But in the interest of time, I'm going to move right to the resolution that I think is very reflective of the conversations we've had as a board. And that is that the Board of Trustees authorizes the chair and vice chair to finalize no later than June 30th, 2024, an employment contract extension through June 30, 2027 with the chancellor. Could I have a motion? Moved by Trustee Micho, seconded by Trustee Kane. In the interest of time, I think we can go right to a vote unless anybody would. Great. Let's start with, we need to do this online, right?
So all in favor, then Lisa's vote.
Okay, all in favor? All opposed? We need you on the record, Trustee Eames.
Yes.
Great, thank you very much. We have work to do, but
Thank you very much. My mother was alive. She'd say, "See, Daniel, you fooled another one." No, I very much appreciate the work that we've been able to accomplish over the last 5 years, and going into the future years now as well is quite rewarding, and I very much appreciate it. Want to thank each of the trustees, and I also want to thank the presidents and the vice chancellors who I have the opportunity to work with. We have an unbelievable team. I know I use that term a lot, but when you're the youngest of 8 children, you get used to the term team. So these are wonderful people that I have the opportunity to work with. So I very, very much appreciate that. And we do have a lot of work to do. We are still facing the challenges that other systems in New England faces, and those of us here in Maine are in the oldest demographic state in the nation, which is located in the oldest region in the nation, New England. Having said that, there are really good signs as I sit with you today, or at least based on last Friday's numbers, we're about 430 students ahead of where we were at this time last year. That can change, melt can happen. On the other hand, I'd rather be 430 ahead as opposed to 430 behind, where we have been in the recent past. I also would tell you, with respect to students who are enrolled for the upcoming semester in August, we're about 1,100 ahead of where we were at this time. Now, maybe that's just people got fired up and got registered a little bit earlier. But again, I'd rather be in that position. But I think one of the things that I would like to talk about in general, having heard from each of the presidents, one of the things that I'm very, very proud about our university system is, as opposed to being torn apart by the issues that are being debated or ill debated on other campuses, our campuses were able to celebrate a freedom of speech and a listening. Speech is easy, listening is a little harder. I have to say that each of our universities went above and beyond what anyone would have expected to make sure that we were not impacted in the negative way that so many other universities across this nation were impacted. But in so many ways, including, I might add, in the speech of the graduating law student who did give a profound address, we were able to listen, hear, react, internalize, and externalize. I think that is in no small result of the leadership, the presidents and their staffs on their campuses, and quite frankly, the nature of our university and the system itself was really quite extraordinary. And I salute the students and the faculty. And in those cases where either people had to secure situations, everyone did the right thing to an unbelievable extent. And it would be easy because we weren't racked to ignore that. But I think it's even more important to recognize it because we weren't racked as other places were. So I very much appreciate that having taken place. I also have to say that I enjoyed the 2 graduations that I was able to attend, and my wife particularly enjoyed being invited to the law school graduation, bringing us back to many, many years ago when I graduated from law school. So it was a lot of fun. Having said that, I also want to say the team that I often praise and talk about got us to this day. Ryan and and the team of people that he has assembled has done an absolutely fabulous job on the budget, and it's not over, and we'll have adjustments that are going to have to be made and all of that sort of stuff. But I salute his work. Jeff and his work, including on enrollment and the like, as well as making sure that we had probably the best reaction to FAFSA failure in New England. He deserves great credit for that. Carolyn Dorsey and her leadership, both as a vice chancellor and as my chief of staff, has done unbelievable work. And I would say of Joan's work on behalf of the entire system when it comes to making us better and stronger in making sure that the research that's being undertaken and supported gets to all of our universities. And quite frankly, the sharing of the extraordinary personnel that she has on research to the other campuses and to the system as a whole is greatly appreciated. So this is a wonderful way for us to end day to be enacting our budgets, to be moving forward, to setting the course for not just the next year, but for years to come. And finally, I would say that the advancement that we have made in infrastructure is quite remarkable. The appreciation that you as trustees have for the necessity of us rebuilding our infrastructure so that we can move forward, so that we can attract students, and so that we can retain those students is extremely, extremely important. And I'm very grateful for the actions that the trustees have taken in support and understanding how far behind we were in infrastructure investment, and not that we have caught up, but we are in fact making progress. And so I very much appreciate that. And let's get some more work done.
Yeah. It's the team that can do it. Let's move on to policy. We have a red line first read that Trustee Alexander is chairing that committee. Will take us through.
Thank you very much. You have before you a cover letter and proposed changes to section 207 signatory authorities, section 208 logos and trademarks, section 210 legal affairs policy, and section 211 the main prize. The cover sheet describes for you what I would consider fairly minor but important changes to make sure that we're using the proper terms and that we provide the appropriate level of discretion to the board with regard to some of these issues. I'd be happy to answer any questions about those particular items, which are here for first reading. I also would like to bring up an issue involving section 213, which is honorary degrees. You do not have a proposed change to that policy before you, but I would bring to your attention the fact that this particular policy has an option in it for granting a University of Maine system degree, which struck me as somewhat unusual, and I know it's not commonly done. And I would just ask if there are indications of concern about this, or whether we want to continue with this option, that you bring it to our attention either here or at some point during our working group meetings, and we can come back to you with any recommendations on that particular item. One more item to point out is that we have some upcoming discussions of the sections 212, 214, and 215. Some of these relate to free speech and political activities. We have the communication from the faculty on that. One of those matters, we're going to give it a very serious attention in our next round of considerations and initiate several educational background and stakeholder discussions about those issues before we next have something for your consideration. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions or hear any comment that would.
Great, thank you. Trustee Kane.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Trustee Alexander. It's an incredible amount of work and it's excellent work, and it's very easy to follow. I will tell you, when you talked about the system degree, I was like, what? Right, so I will say, I would be in the camp of saying that seems like something we don't really need. We have plenty of places that we offer degrees from. In fact, and I it's an interesting thing to learn. I would be curious to know the history more in another time and setting, but my instinct on that was, this seems like something from another time that was maybe created in a moment, but clearly has not been sustained or used, and so perhaps has served its purpose.
And it's an honorary degree,
Yes.
a system, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's honorary.
Well, there's time to comment. Obviously, this is the process. This is the first read. It will come back at the next meeting for final. And the committee will take a look at it. So get any comments or concerns to the committee. Anybody have any other concerns, questions? Trustee Eames? Trustee Eames?
Yes, thank you, Chair Riley. I just wanted to thank Trustee Alexander. She makes serving on this committee super easy because she does all the work and then brings it to us and says, are you guys okay with this? And we talk, and Trustee Flood is also on the committee, but there's a big thanks that should go to Barbara for all her work on this.
Thank you.
It's tedious and important work, so thank you. And thanks to all the committee. We do have, as part of the review that Trustee Alexander and team have undertaken, we have tweaked the conflict of interest policy, and we wanted to make sure that the conflict of interest form that the board fills out annually, only we haven't filled it out last year, so we need to do it again, is up to date and reflects the new policy. We will be sharing that with you for your completion very soon. But Eamon Purington from the council's office is here to take us through that new document, which is in your board material.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. pivoting to something very fun and exciting. So if I could borrow your lightsaber, no, just so good morning. Thanks. So I'll just be discussing some revisions to the trustee financial disclosure form or the conflict of interest form. This is a product of board section policy 206. Ethics code and conflicts of interest, which require the clerk's office to maintain this form and for all of you to fill out this form on the commencement of your terms and then annually thereafter. And the policy just requires the form to cover 4 elements, which are relatively narrow. So up to this point, the form has been pretty bare bones. And so the purpose of these revisions was to add some questions targeting areas that are more common potential conflicts of interest, and frankly, to align the form with best practices for nonprofit boards and for higher ed boards. So you'll see in tab 3 this revised form, and there's some targeted questions about business transactions with the university, grants or assistance that you may receive from the university, family members who work at the university, and then a couple sort of catch-all questions for any potential conflicts of interest of any category. And I also just wanted to clarify briefly what this form doesn't do. It doesn't change the definition of a conflict of interest, and it doesn't change how potential conflicts of interest are handled or addressed by the board. It's merely one tool that is used to disclose potential conflicts of interest so bring out these scenarios into the open so they can be addressed and managed. So that's all I had for you. If you have any further questions.
There are questions. Trustee Alexander.
No question. I would just say that our working group did review this form with Paul and his office, and we felt that it did comply with our recently adopted section 206.
Great.
Thank you.
Any other concerns? Question, Trustee Martin?
Great. Great work. I'm not doing such great work over here. Destroying
break anything.
technology. See if I get that. I just had a question in regards to trustee relationships in regard to trustee spouse. Is there any consideration to partners or anything like that, or does it hard stop at spouse?
I think most of these questions, so the form again doesn't define what a conflict of interest is, but it is meant to gather, broad disclosures. So I think most of these questions do include spouse, family members, et cetera.
Broadly defined. Yeah. Trustee Alexander?
I would just say that the trustees should use their own good sense in identifying this situation. I don't think there was an intent to use a word other than the one that's normally used in the law on this matter currently. So it's something that I would trust the good sense of the trustee to handle in an appropriate manner.
Thank you.
Okay. So we will be, any other questions? Eamon, thank you. And thank you for your help. We've cleaned this up and we will get it. Again, you'll get a survey and you'll get this form to fill out and complete in the name of transparency. Those become obviously public documents, important for our commitment to transparency and avoidance of conflict of interest. Trustee Kane?
Yeah, my question, I think even maybe a question for you, which is, there are so many boards across the state, right? And we have to fill out different forms for the state too. Was there any look at sort of what is consistent across other public boards in the state for the expansion of the form?
So I'll have to come clean that I did not draft this. Paul Chan, our general counsel, drafted this. I'm a stand in case that wasn't clear. And I'm happy to pass that question
That'd be
along
great.
to him.
Thank you.
I do know just generally his approach was to align with best practices at nonprofits and other higher ed boards. So I do know that he was looking at
Great.
other forms. I don't know the specific ones he looked at.
Thank you.
Emily, I have a small answer. So when I was in the board office doing this initial work with Paul, we did look at our peers
Oh,
and
great.
see what the Board of Regents or trustees at those peers were using. And Paul has past experience with boards. And so we kind of collated on what was best practice at those to come up with some of the major areas that they were looking at on the conflict of interest form.
That's great. Thank you.
Anybody have any other questions? And I should explain, Paul Chan is not here because he's participating in the PhD ceremonies for his son. Pretty exciting. Let me suggest our next item of business is the budget, which reflects months and months and months and months and hours of work. So I would suggest we take a 10-minute break. It's a great presentation. I want everybody's full attention. And why don't we take a 10-minute break, grab some coffee, and we will be back in action. Oh, I forgot.
Except for the sun. Did you guys see, you didn't see the sun?
What?
The new installation?
No,
It's something
where is it?
in dead front of campus, right in front of.
All right, when we go out, we must have.
It has not been received well.
Really?
All it is just yellow rebar.
Oh,
It doesn't look like anything that you would have thought.
no. Okay. Now we name names. Could everybody please grab a seat? We're not going, before, Ryan, I have to do one quick thing, stay there and get ready. I would like, before we move to make sure that we, all of us have taken and reviewed in executive session the nominees for the 2025 honorary degrees, a very important confidential initiative, but we do need a resolution to approve them. Could I have a motion to accept that the Board of Trustees approves the 2025 nominations for honorary degrees as presented? Moved by Trustee Kate, seconded by Trustee Micho. All those in favor? All those opposed? Is Lisa with us? Lisa?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and Lisa says yes. Thank you. And now with that, we with great thanks to Vice Chancellor Lowe and his team for extraordinary work, the budget presentation. Drum roll.
Cover this morning. I'll start with the budget presentation and look forward to that discussion. I'll talk a little bit about investment income, and then I'll close with the final fiscal year 24 budget forecast. So let me start with the budget. Really excited to be presenting for your approval the FY25 UMS operating budget. It is an approximately $650 million expense budget. It reflects, as the chair said, really a lot of hard work, a lot of difficult choices, without exception, at each of our institutions. I want to start by just noting a couple of thanks. Really want to thank the presidents and the campus community. Again, for folks that have been here for a while, it wasn't that long ago that we didn't have any of this process. So the campuses just did their budgets on their own, and we bring them to the trustees in April and May, and that would be the first time a lot of you saw that. And I think all of our campuses now have a very active campus process. Starts in the fall, public forums, lots of input. And so at the end of the day, we may not all think that the decisions that are reached are the best ones, and maybe we would have come up with something different. But we do, I think, a great job at the campuses allowing that kind of public input. And so I want to thank them. Want to thank all the CBOs that I have the privilege, and the extended finance team that I have the privilege of working with on a regular basis. Just incredibly talented, incredibly dedicated, and I'm super excited that I get a chance to take credit for all the great work that they do. On my team in particular, I want to thank Miriam, who's behind me, and Angela and Sharon that you don't see, that just contribute countless hours to this budget process, from just scheduling and all of the things that we do. I want to thank all of the trustees. I started off my notes thanking just the FFT, but as I reflected on the meetings that we had in March and April and May, it was all of the trustees who were regularly attending those budget meetings, taking time out of their schedules to get up to speed. And I know that's not easy, and very much appreciated, in addition to the work that you were doing on your own committees. I want to thank especially Trustee Cates and the chair, who have been working with us on this budget going all the way back to October, at least. Every Friday morning, I have a budget conversation with the chancellor and the board chair and the FFT chair, bounce ideas off them throughout this entire process. And so, publicly, it feels like this really condensed budget process from March to May. But the reality is not only the campuses, but we've had trustees that have been working on this for months and months. And again, we're very appreciative of that. As the chair noted, this is our first time in more than a decade when have a chance to present a budget to you that does not use system reserves. Also, as noted, it's the first time in more than a decade that we're presenting a balanced budget at Farmington. The first time that we're ever presenting one at Maine Law in its new structure. So again, a lot of hard work, a lot of really great work. But I still want to emphasize, there's a lot more work that we need to do ahead. Again, a lot of progress, but we need to get to the point where we're not just balancing our budget, but instead we're investing back into our institutions. We have less reliance on one-time funds, less reliance on attrition. And we'd love to get to the point where the end of the year, those dollars are available for other investments instead of looking backwards and helping us balance a budget that we passed a few months earlier. So it does, as I've noted several times, it does reflect progress. I'm very excited about where we are. I'm excited to start the FY26 budget process in just a few weeks, but that will be a difficult exercise. I definitely don't want to create this illusion that we're going to come back next year and everything's going to be that much easier. But it's steps, and we're making really, really good progress. This again, I've been doing this slide for several years now. Just really reflects the full year-long process that the budget is. You'll see way over on the right side. We're over at budget BOT budget approval today, so very excited about that. You can see really all of the steps that we've gone through, and you can see just a couple of bubbles away. We're going to be starting the process all over again. Some of the 25 budget pressures, you're familiar with these. I note here lack of growth in credit hour generation. I'd really probably flip that around if I was doing it again and note that as a positive. I had the great pleasure last night of seeing former trustee Fournier, and was reflecting with him all of the presentations I did, some of them here, where I celebrated 6% and 7% declines in enrollment and talked about how that was beating this 10% trend and all of this. And so the fact that we're even at the point where our credit hours are flat, and again, notwithstanding the way we made the change to how we're accounting for your pace, it would have actually probably shown as an increase. So that's more of a strength than anything. We still continue to feel the effects of COVID, and it's really continues to impact our auxiliary operations, particularly out of our small campuses, where we've just really had almost like a reset in residence hall occupancy. You can go back a few years ago when we were having conversations about some of these campuses moving from 300-400 people, and do we need to put in more dorms? To now we're down to less than 200 in some kind of cases, and we're having conversations about how we can repurpose a dorm that we're not using now. And then we continue to face the challenges of labor and attracting and retaining employees. System-wide budget assumptions. So again, this budget does assume a modest in-state 3% undergraduate tuition increase, and I'll talk about that in just a couple of minutes. We're grateful for the 4.5% increase in state appropriations. It does reflect roughly a 3% increase in compensation and benefits, and then it comes with all of the campus-specific assumptions like enrollment and out-of-state. For the 25 budget, again, I'll just hit on just a couple of these. Again, as I noted, FY25 budget hours are basically flat to slightly above over last year's budgeted credit hours. Occupancy continues to be a challenge. Capital, we talked about capital a couple of times. That continues to be it's gone from a significant weakness, and we're making progress. It's becoming a strength. We've got another 4.3% increase in unrestricted investments. So what are we spending in E&G and auxiliary? And then again, as I noted, some strong budget balancing system-wide. I'll note, again, Presque Isle and Augusta are actually budgeting positive operating results. And I'll note, particularly for Presque Isle, I note here they're budgeting positive operating results. When we started this budget process, we were going to be transferring about $250,000 from the system to Presque Isle to get them to a balanced budget. So really flipped that around. So this is the FY25 budget overview. This shows you where each of the campuses stands as this budget is in front of you. I'll walk down briefly. You can see UMaine is forecasting about a $4.8 million deficit on the E&G side. So again, a reminder there, this is part of a 3-year plan that the campus brought forward. And so they're still tracking that plan, showing a modest surplus on the auxiliary side. Ultimately, we'll need to transfer in about 4.8 million of campus reserves to get to a balanced budget. That is, as you can see there, the only transfer in of reserves of any kind in this budget. At UMA, again, forecasting a strong E&G budget, slight deficit in auxiliary, but still 1.1 to the positive. You see Fort Kent, Farmington, and USM, again, all presenting budgets that balance between auxiliaries and E&G. And you see the really strong numbers at Presque Isle, $2.1 million surplus on E&G. Wasn't that long ago that we had a $2.1 million number there, but it had brackets around it. Modest auxiliary deficit. Again, you see that pretty consistently on these small campuses, and about a $1.7 million surplus. So really strong. Governance, again, as I've noted at a couple of the presentations, this is not actually a transfer from reserves, but we had resources left over in 24. And so we'll roll those resources into 25. It means that we charge the campuses about $500,000 less, and then we move this in. So it's a benefit for the campuses. So you can see collectively, it's a series of changes to the positive of about 2.9 million. You see that number on the far right. I'd ask you to just remember that because I'm going to come back to it in about 20 slides. Budget Stabilization Fund, also what we refer to as reserves at the system level. You can see the balance there is about $5 million. More to come on that when I talk a little bit about investment income. State appropriation, everyone always thinks that we should be getting more. Every campus definitely thinks they should be getting more state appropriation. But the reality is we have had strong support in the last several years. We talk about the challenges over the course of a decade and a half. But if you really focus in on, looking at where we were in FY17 at the last budget of Governor LePage transitioning into Governor Mills, we've gone from 182 million up to 239. It's closer to 280 when you add in the restricted funds like MEIF and debt service. And so would we love more? Absolutely. But we're incredibly grateful for this support, especially when you look at it relative to peers. So grateful for that. Notwithstanding that, we do lose ground to inflation, lose buying power on a regular basis. You can see it's tightened up a little bit in recent years as those increases have got larger, but we really struggled in that 2008 to 2016 range. Maine Economic Improvement Fund, this really just shows you the breakdown of that 21.8 million. I talked a little bit about some of these categories at the May FFT meeting. I think what I'd mentioned today is just draw your attention to the small campus initiative in the bottom right. You can see the 655,000 there. You heard several of the presidents today talk about some of those proposals. What I just wanted to mention on this one is, I had the privilege of running this program for a number of years before Joan's team stepped up and took that over. And it wasn't that long ago that this is an award that Maine Maritime is eligible for. And more than half the money we were giving back to Maine Maritime because we couldn't even get our own campuses to put in proposals. And so just the great work that's going on with the campuses, the great support work that President Farini Mundy and her team do. You can see the dollars are not only staying in the system, but they're going to really great projects. And so really appreciate all of that effort. I mentioned again enrollment. This just shows you that the theme here is generally flat. You can see overall credit hours are flat. Out-of-state credit hours are flat. Early college, again, largely flat. Important to note there that's largely a resource issue. It's a state resource issue. So again, we waive half of it and the state does the other half. And so, get questions during the budget presentations about, why isn't that growing at a larger rate? Some of it again is state resources. And then you see in the bottom right, the incredible growth of the Your Pace subscriptions there, up to 5246, up over 1,000 from last year's actuals. Residence hall occupancy, again, I've mentioned this, you can see overall occupancy or overall capacity, if you will, has come down a little bit in 25. That is a result of a number of those initiatives that we've approved as part of the FFT committee, the bond that we got from state government, where we put money back into these dorms, where we've converted bathrooms over into singles. And when you do that, you lower the overall occupancy number. You can see, or the capacity number, excuse me. You can see occupancy is heading up in a positive trend. It is a mixed bag between different campuses. And so, as I said before, lots of conversations going on about residence halls and capacity. Important to note, as the chair has mentioned a few times, we're going to talk about tuition in just a couple of slides. Felt it was very important before we went out and we asked students or anyone, the state, to contribute more, that we were being as efficient as we could with the resources that we had. And so what you see here is really just a collection of 7 to 8 pages worth of efficiencies that are going on at each of the individual campuses. So if you have the full presentation and you scroll back to the appendix, you'll find an example of this for each one of our campuses with all of the details. And so really great work, energy, space, really just kind of trying to reimagine ourselves as institutions. Recommended tuition credit hour rates, again, as I mentioned, largely in that 3% range. You see that in the in-state rate. Again, we don't do pennies when it comes to credit hours, and so that's why the percentages are sometimes 2.9 or 3.1. Out of state, we give campuses great flexibility there, just because they're all after different markets. But again, we're generally trending also in that 3% range. Number of special and differential tuition rates, all of these are not necessarily brand new, but differential tuition is one of those ones where we talk about it. It's part of the budget presentations. We haven't always included it in the slides. And so in conversations with both the chairs, we wanted to go through the process, be as transparent as we could. So we took all of those differential tuition rates throughout the system, the old ones, the new ones, and you see those reflected in those 2 slides right there. Again, these are programs where we're simply looking to recover the costs. These are high expense programs. And so looking for, in most of those cases, simply to break even. Mandatory fees are going up in some campuses. You can see the varying amounts on average. Depends which campus you are, but again, somewhere in the $30 to $450 range. Again, we see those by campus and individual fee there. Recommended room board rates in that 3% range. Again, there are a few campuses. USM was one of those. I think UMaine is another one, where multi-year plans to get rates more competitive with peers. And so some cases you see variations. I'll also note here, excuse me, that the rates that we show here are for the most common room type on a particular campus. And so, not every student at UMFK will pay $95.90, for instance. If you're in a single, maybe you'll pay more. If you're in a, and so on. So that's what these rates reflect right here. And then finally, again, this was a new one that we added within the last couple of years, which was, let's take it all, roll it up, and understand what the real impact is on students. And you can see with tuition, mandatory fees, room and board, before any financial aid, the average increase for our in-state students is, and out of states, is somewhere in that 3.6 to 3.8 range. Annual tuition growth rate. So there's a number of measures that we track to make sure that tuition is growing at a rate that our students can afford. This would show that the 5-year the 5-year average in-state tuition and fees relative relative to inflation has gone down by 6% over the last 5 years. We've been doing this chart since 2017, 2018. We've never had a 5-year period where our tuition kept pace with inflation. That's a good thing for our students, so I'm not suggesting we change that. But you can see the trend now is for colleges across the country to be lowering their prices. But again, go back and pull my presentation from 3 years or 4 years ago, and UMaine and maybe 1 or 2 other schools were the only ones that were actually below that line. So we've done great work, but we've been doing it for a lot longer than some of the others on there. Tuition as a percentage of per capita income, as well as a percentage of Maine household income, again, continues to look really strong. We've got a little bit of a lag in the data, so 2022. So I expect next year this will actually go down a little bit more because we froze tuition in 23. So when the data catches up, I think next year you'll see those drop below 14 and maybe even drop below 12. Last handful of slides here. So the FY25 budget does include attrition. So again, for those that don't know, attrition is known retirements, known vacancies. Even if you have every plan in the world to fill a position as quickly as you can, there's often a lag. Sometimes it's significant. We accumulate dollars during that window. So we proactively try to look at historical trends, identify those dollars on the front end and capture them to help balance the budget. We'd love to get to the point where this would be a nice surprise at the end of the fiscal year, and then we could just roll it back into the institution. But if we have to make reductions, if we have to trim, this is a better place to do it because it doesn't, I don't want to say it doesn't impact anyone, because sometimes you need to build in a window, but it minimizes the impact on personnel. This budget, total investment in facilities is up, as I mentioned, 4.3%. The depreciation expense itself is up by 4.8 million. So again, as you bring newer buildings online, it means you need to invest more, so that depreciation target goes up. And so if we're not investing at least 4.8 million, then we're not keeping pace. So in this case, we're not keeping pace in this budget. The thing that helps us out is we have a lot of money on the congressionally directed spending and in other buckets, state buckets. And so if there are windows when we're going to be down, this is how we kind of plan that, give the campuses a little bit more budget flexibility, but not taking the foot off the gas as far as investing in our facilities. Total E&G and auxiliary capital investment, you'll note here, is at 20.4 million, and we're funding about 66% of that depreciation target. Capital investments in this budget. I'm going to go through these next slides really quickly because I don't want to ruin the surprise at the June FFT meeting. So we're going to go into extensive detail about the 5, 10-year, 1-year capital plans. I know you'll all be there for that. So, but one of the things I'm particularly proud, I mean, again, several years ago, we'd come to you with a $20 million capital budget, and then we'd figure out what we were going to spend it on after you approved it. And now we're to the point where not only can we tell you how we're going to spend the 20.3 million, but we can tell you by campus and by category exactly what it's going to do to NAV. So huge credit to the facilities team, to Gretchen, to Nate, and all of the CBOs that have been working on this. Again, a few slides in here that Nate included about where those investments are. Again, you can see mostly in renovation. That's what we want to see. And then spending by categories. So again, you can see most of it in systems and envelope and renovation. As I mentioned, next steps, 1-year capital plans in June, and then we'll go on to talk about the 5-year capital plan as well. And then last slide, because I know there was some interest in this, university services unallocated. So again, a number of categories where we make strategic investments. The concept here from the trustees a number of years ago was take a percentage off the top of any new state appropriations. We're going to invest them back in those initiatives that have a system-wide impact. And so you see here, this represents an accumulation of probably 5 to 6 years worth of ideas. Some have been here from the beginning, like research reinvestment funds. Some are newer, like library software investments and so on. So one of the things that we have committed to with Trustee Cates and the FFT committee is this fall, kind of working down through this list. We've got a list that talks about put together a summary of the demo fund. So we've had it for X number of years, and here's the projects that we've done. So we'll walk through each one of these with the FFT committee, get a feeling for whether it's something that's still relevant. Are there places where we need to be making new investments? So look forward to that discussion over the summer as well. And then as part of Public Law 2011, Chapter 616, so this goes back to some of the challenges with the Maine Turnpike Authority back a decade plus ago. We are required regularly to report on travels, meals, memberships, gifts. And so we do that as part of this exercise. We also do it as part of the budget forecast. So at least 4 or 5 times a year, we're coming to the committee and we're talking about those kind of categories again that are required by statute. And then the last few slides really just show you the rolled up E&G, auxiliary, and overall budgets. Again, I'll just note a couple of things here, but happy to answer any questions. You see the pie chart on the left, 45% state appropriation, 45% net tuition and fees. The positive side of that is that the state, this chart last year was 47-43 slanted towards the students. And so it's nice to see that balanced again. Having said that, if you looked at this chart in 2000, it was 66% state and 1/3 are students. And so we're making progress, and again, appreciate those increased state contributions, but maybe not quite the balance that we want to end up with. Our expense budget, we often talk about this 71% people, so it always does make it challenging when we're in these budget cutting exercises. E&G, or excuse me, this is the auxiliary side. Number of big changes here, largely related to the transition in dining at the University of Maine. Made some of these numbers when you're comparing 1 year when they were in and 1 year when they were out, significant jumps there. And then the combined version, again, I know all of you remember that number that I mentioned, but if you look down there behind the coffee pot, the roughly 2 million one number corresponds back with when we rolled up all of the individual campuses. So it's always great when the math works out at the end. And I think that's it. Again, you have lots of really good information in your appendix, more information about the campus efficiencies, more slides on enrollment and residency hall by campus. But that completes my presentation, Madam Chair, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Great presentation. And it does reflect just so much work over such a period of time by Ryan, his team, and everyone around the table. So thank you all. Questions for Ryan? Trustee Alexander.
Is there a way to show, or do we have any information on how fundraising impacts the operational budget of the system? I know fundraising usually is always like build a building or whatever, but do you have any idea about how we could show that, or?
I'll think about how we could show it in the budget. I'll give some thought to that. I'll note that I think it's January. The January FFT meeting is dedicated to that concept. And so it used to just be a report. Darla Reynolds, who runs our accounting department, would simply just present a report. But a couple of years ago, maybe at the board chair's suggestion, we added in the heads of the 2 foundations. So they both come do a presentation to FFT as well and talk about that. The 2 presidents of the large campuses present as well. So we covered a lot there. So just an FYI for next January, but I'll talk with Miriam and the team and see if there's a way that we can roll that into this as well.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Other questions? Comments? I know you've all seen it. Yep, Trustee McCarthy.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Very important, good work by everyone. And this is more of like future focused question. I'm very supportive of the budget. Can you talk about, and I know you think about this a lot, how you look at a budget in the context of a 5 or 10-year forecast, and how kind of that plays out in your mind? Because I'm thinking about, we're seeing trends out there that some are good and some aren't great in higher ed, and like how you think about that.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So I don't know if it'll be, I don't know that we're going to be ready for the June FFT meeting, but probably the meeting after that, we'll present what we do annually. We'll present the 5-year forecast for the system. And so It builds off from this. And so the first year in that 5-year forecast will be this FY25 budget that you have in front of you now. And then we'll go out and we'll forecast, I think it's about 8 of the big kind of cost driver, compensation, benefits, enrollment. You think about the levers that impact our budgets. We'll forecast each of those out at the system and the campus level over a 5-year period. And that we'll start to see those kind of trends. And so one of the changes we made to that document, we've been doing that since about 2008, was several years ago, we started adding in the campuses, the individual campuses as well, because one of the challenges we had just doing at the system level is, if UMaine and USM in the same year were really rocking it, it can hide what's going on at 5 other locations, and just the opposite too. If UMaine's having a bad year, it could look like the system is down and really 5 other campuses are having great years and stuff. So we do that at both levels. We've had the conversation with the FFT chair. We really want to engage in a really deep conversation about that this year, just because of the strategic plan conversations and what we're having about looking forward. Typically, that's just a presentation where I'll talk for 20 minutes and I may get 1 or 2 questions. But I think what we're really hoping is to have a good discussion about tuition, for instance. Tuition, I mean, we had questions about the 3% of tuition that we forecasted and how transparent were we? Well, we're transparent. We forecasted it 4 years ago. I said we were going to increase tuition by 3% in FY25. And so we want to be transparent, but we want to get board reaction too. We don't want to put 7% in there and then have the board say, we would never do that. And so we want it to be a little bit more back and forth, but I think that will be a really important conversation teeing up the FY26 budget for sure.
Yep. There is work ahead. Anybody else? It's interesting as the world, every time you open a newspaper, it seems to me somebody's questioning the value of higher education. I think it's largely due to cost and the debt that students incur, even with these increases in the fees and tuition, which we don't do lightly. It's, I think, about an $800 cost to students on average. We still are far more affordable. Each of the universities has done an extraordinary job tightening belts without compromising quality. And I think that's really important. And we need to keep in mind, 86% of our students are on financial aid, not loans, financial aid. And that when they graduate, those who do have debt, as Sam Warren has taught us, that debt is less than the cost of a used pickup. This is a value opportunity, and I really appreciate everybody's work to make sure these public universities are the value that they are, and the kind of work that goes on to create these budgets. It's really quite extraordinary. And we know we have hard work ahead. So with that, let me read the resolution. That the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee and approves the FY 2025 updated proposed University of Maine system operating and capital budget, recommended student charges, and proposed transfers from institutional reserves. And again, those are reserves that campuses hold, not system reserves. Is there a motion? Moved by Trustee Cates, seconded by Trustee Kane. Any comments? All those in favor? All those opposed? Trustee Eames?
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Thank you.
And I think you're going to do another update for us.
Yes. I'm going to talk about investment income and then I'll roll into the forecast. So the managed investment pool with a market value of just under 400 million, 397 million at the close of March, saw a gain of 2.2% for the month, brings the fiscal year to date gain in the MIP to 10.8%. April took back some of those gains with NAPC estimating that the MIP lost about 2.7% for the month. April results are estimated based on index returns. May so far is looking pretty good, so we'll keep our fingers crossed till the end of the month. The pension fund with a market value of 18 million also saw a gain for the month of 1.2%, bringing its fiscal year to date gain to 6.1%. We also think the pension fund probably lost about 2% in April. And then finally, the operating fund with a market value of 277 million saw a gain of 1.1% or 2.8 million for the month, brings the fiscal year to date return to 6.4% through the end of March for a total return of 14.4 million or 12.4 million over the budget. Unfortunately, it looks like we gave back probably almost all of that $2.8 million gain in April. So we're sitting somewhere at about the $10 million mark above budget with just a couple of months to go. We'll obviously end the fiscal year on June 30 by mid-April. I'd recommend I would think we'll have final results here. So if we have positive results and we've got a good opportunity to talk about being above budget, we'll work with the chancellor and come back and make recommendations to the FFT where we would distribute any surplus there. And then finally, the FY24 April forecast for E&G and auxiliary. So as a reminder, we do forecasts about three times a year. We've changed that a little bit in recent years because we typically use what used to be the October forecast as our opportunity to revise budgets based on fall enrollment. So what you see here again, this chart looks familiar. It looks similar to the one that I showed you in the budget presentation. So what you'll see far left, we'll start with UMaine, originally budgeted a deficit of 8.1 million. In February, they came back and said that was just a little bit better, just above 8 million. Now coming in at 7.2, so an improvement of about $800,000 there. So that will lower the amount of reserves that was necessary at the University of Maine. At UMA, largely holding steady. So again, it forecasted a modest deficit in February. That's come down just a little bit. I'm going to skip Farmington for a second because there's a little bit more to say there. Huge credit to Fort Kent, Presque Isle. You can see the progression from left to right in both of those campuses. So here at Fort Kent, starting at 1.4, February down to 1.2, April down to 800,000. If we could just stretch out the fiscal year a little bit longer, we'll get that thing back down to zero. But really great work there on the part of the president and Pam and others here at the campus. Again, meeting 400,000 of reserves that will stay in the system. At Presque Isle, again, I mentioned that change, originally a $214,000 deficit, now projecting $188,000 surplus there. USM still tracking budget. Maine Law is tracking budget. Again, you'll remember one of the things I mentioned at the February forecast was we'll swap out some capital funding with some bond funds that we have, and we'll do that at the end of the year, and that will bring Maine Law back down to a zero there, a balanced budget. Drop down below the line, governance forecasting about a $700,000 surplus now. Again, largely reflection of attrition. So Chief Human Resource Officer has been vacant for a little while. The CIO position is vacant right now. That's what I mean by attrition. We've gone out and we've actively recruited people, but we're accumulating some dollars in the months while we're going through that process. So that's up about 250,000. University services allocated, we're anticipating about 450,000 there. We're anticipating about 100,000 in the unallocated line. So overall, net positive, but let me go back up to Farmington. So Farmington, we did see some slippage there. We knew it was an aggressive budget. Again, this is a campus that we were providing about $3 million worth of support to just a couple of years ago. Started to see some of that slippage in February, came in at about 362. We've seen an increase of that as the campus has kind of processed everything in the spring. I'm looking at about a $1.2 million number there. $1.2 million change, some reserve to offset a little bit of that. The challenge that we've run into there, it's really kind of three areas: increased fuel expenses, attrition targets. So again, you'll recall the campus originally presented a balanced 24 budget. It became unbalanced in the fall after enrollment. In January, the campus came back and presented a number of changes. One of those changes was to increase their attrition target. They had hit their attrition target very easily. At that point, this was a conversation again back in January. Their annual target, they'd already hit 90% of it. So when you're looking for new things, well, let's just increase the attrition target a little bit. And then ultimately folks stayed. So it's not a bad thing when you don't have employee turnover. It's a bad thing in the sense when you budgeted for it. So that contributed to about a third of the gap. And then roughly another third or so was postseason travel for athletics that was unbudgeted, had a couple of very successful teams, a couple of very expensive playoff runs that accumulated large 5-figure deficits in just a couple of those trips. So Joe's promised to recruit worse athletes in 26 to get that budget back in line. I will say, yeah. We'll say the president has been all over this one. As soon as they identified the gap, he reached out to the chancellor, reached out to myself. We've had a number of meetings with the campus. Joe sent out a memo to the campus talking about changes they're going to make in 25. They're going to go to a monthly budget forecast, monthly budget conversations with his cabinet, monthly budget meetings with departments, just to really kind of, again, keep up on this, doubling down on space consolidation and so on. So I think we still feel good about the Farmington budget in 25. Certainly something we're going to need to keep our eye on. But this slippage, while unfortunate, I still think we're trending in the right direction. So we'll see where we end at the end of June. We'll work with the campus. We'll see what we can do to mitigate that. And then again, we'll come back to a recommendation to the board chair and the FFT chair about how we resolve that gap if one still exists.
Thank you. Questions? Trustee Cates.
I just wanted to mention, but Brian mentioned the budget stabilization fund and the other reserve funds. So I know there's been a lot of interest on the board in better understanding these various reserve funds, how they're funded, where the money comes from, where it goes. So I think that's actually on our June agenda for FFT. So that's an important discussion. And as we have a very good year with investment return, the question is, where is that money going to go? Is it going to stay within the budget stabilization, the rainy day fund, so to speak, or is it going to be into another fund that is makes it more available for the kinds of investments or bets we want to make as a board on the future of the system? So that'll be a very interesting discussion in June. Thanks.
It's not every day that the FFT chair can give highlights, coming events.
Right.
Any other questions?
I was going to sell the movie rights to the Farmington situation with the president instructing the coaches to intentionally lose games.
Well, congratulations on the winning teams. Now for fundraising.
Also.
Okay.
Yeah, so one question, I know you touched on it and appreciate President McDonald is all over the situation. 25 budget. Is this not a new assumption that we go to the base of the 25 budget, or like, how are you thinking of that it's?
You mean the places where there are gaps? How do they roll?
Yeah, how does it roll into that? Is that a different assumption than we had going into it?
Yeah, certainly invite Joe to jump in on that if he wants.
So there are a lot of variables in terms of, so it's not, you have to look at what the revenue will be, which will be different. What the expenses are and how many employees we have lost that may not be filled. So it's not as if you can just do a continuation. The other thing, as Ryan mentioned, we are going to be renting several houses that we now have. We're going to be selling certain properties that we have, so that will change the mix as well.
Right. And really strong enrollment numbers for the fall that I think we've referenced a couple of times as well.
Praying for no melt. Right. Anybody else? Ryan, thank you very much. I think we now turn to Tracy for energy savings performance contract. Tracy Elliott.
Thank you, Chair Rowdy, and good morning, everyone. To put my glasses on. So today I'm addressing the financing resolutions in your material, and these were approved by the Finance Committee at its May 8th meeting and relate to the University of Maine's Energy Savings Lighting Project, the project that you approved last January. As a reminder, the scope of this $2.3 million project includes replacing nearly 6,000 lights on the Orono campus with energy saving approved LED lights in approximately 61 buildings. Today's resolution language meets Treasury regulation requirements that document the project qualifies for tax exempt financing. Importantly, these resolutions also permit the university to use future debt proceeds to reimburse itself for allowable construction costs, including expenditures made 60 days prior to today's resolution. And the reason that's so important is we intend to fund a large amount of these costs through operating dollars to allow the campus to achieve interest savings, and then we'll issue the financing in the fall. So any costs incurred will be allowable and reimbursable. As a final comment, the University of Maine will fund its debt service payments primarily through the energy savings from these projects. With that, take any questions?
Thanks, Tracy. Questions? Crystal clear. Seeing none, we'll go right to the resolution. That the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the FFT Committee and approves the financing ESPC project and reimbursement of project expenditures resolution to authorize the University of Maine system acting through the University of Maine to fund an ESPC project implementing energy conservation measures related to approximately 61 campus buildings with a project total of up to $2.3 million using financing with a maximum principal amount of debt of $2.3 million. Can I have a motion? Moved by Trustee Michaud, seconded by Trustee Cates. Any further conversation? All those in favor? All those opposed? Trustee Eames?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tracy. We're going to flip the agenda because Trustee Kane has to take a business call, and we are going to move right now to Vice Chancellor Dorsey for strategic initiatives. And thank you, Vice Chancellor St. John, for allowing us to flip you again.
He's involved in this one too.
I
so.
know.
Yes, good morning. So I have two different updates to offer today, although I was struggling a bit while I was sitting there, not with my content, but it's been a very enjoyable meeting and everyone is so humorous and I'm not funny and I can't come up with any one-liners, none. So I'm just going to stick to my report and the next person, Jeff, will come up with something funny, I'm sure. Okay, thank you. Good. The system has been involved in 2 searches for system leadership, and I would like to turn it over to Vice Chancellor Lowe to give an update on one of those searches.
Yes, so thank you. As everyone knows, we've been searching for a chief information officer for a couple of months now. We had a very robust process. Want to really thank all of the folks that participated in that process. We had more than 160 people who joined us for those Zoom meetings, got over 130 pieces of really great feedback. Thank you to AI for processing all of that feedback for us. We have selected Robert Placido to be our next Chief Information Officer. Robert will start on June the 1st.
Thank you. Thank you. Also, we are in the midst of the search for a Chief Human Resource Officer. The committee has been working on first round interviews with the candidates, and I'll have an update for you all at the upcoming HRLR committee on that work. So just wanted to give that quick update. The second topic today is on strategic plan committee, specifically some reporting and what we talked about at our last strategic planning committee meeting. We met on May 9th, and at that point, we provided you with some proposed system KPIs and metrics. They're under the 7 areas, which you can see on the screen. And these areas, what we've done is while the campuses or universities will continue to track their individual metrics and their different goals, we're using some comprehensive information and data that will bring all of that together for one sort of system view when it comes to some of the KPIs under, again, these 7 areas that you see here. And it will just give an opportunity for us to report as how collectively together we're doing in making progress towards the goals that we've outlined in the strategic plan. So we offered these at the most recent strategic plan committee meeting. We are planning to take them up in more detail at the upcoming one in June, but wanted to just give an opportunity for Trustee Kane, who was not able to join us at that meeting, to give a little bit of her thoughts on this process. And then we can talk a little bit about the upcoming meeting.
Thank you, Carolyn. And I just will start with a moment of personal gratitude to the chair, Chair Riley. I was very sick that day, and she, with approximately 6 minutes notice, took over the meeting and ran it for me when I was unable to do that. And so I want to say thank you to you for pinch hitting. I did watch the entire meeting on Zoom. It was riveting. And if you haven't watched it, I recommend that you do, because it's quite informative. But I appreciate the chair and her flexibility and leadership in that moment. Yeah, Carolyn summarized what we're doing here, but I think the key thing to understand, and you've all looked at the strategic plan in one way or another, and as Trustee Alexander, I think, coined, there's a lot of plans to make in the plan, right? And so in this next phase of work, we are both tracking we have a list of plans in the plan, basically, that are more on the detailed level, and the presidents have those, and the work is ongoing. And the attempt with this is to really stay on the balcony for the big picture things that we are going to continue to track over time. The actual full presentation, which you can view in Diligent, also includes things like not just the action and the metric, but where we are currently, where we want to get to, and then the target rationale, sort of why are we measuring this, not just, and why are we using this metric? And I think we are in a feedback loop right now. So if you take a look at these, and please communicate any feedback you have so that this can become something we can all use as a touchstone, not just in the strategic planning committee, but also going forward in our full board meetings. And I want to again particularly thank the chair and also Trustee Alexander, who provided feedback in advance of the last committee meeting, which helped us, I think, start a little bit farther ahead in the process. But we want to make these things that everyone can look at, understand, and be clear, but they are the balcony attempt on top of the very detailed work that will be ongoing and is ongoing across all of the committees and across all of the campuses and throughout the system. So, and thank you very much.
And I would like to add that in addition to the pieces of information that were provided, we've also worked at baselines so that you can have a good understanding of where it is that we started from. And that isn't as easy as it sounds. The information is available, but oftentimes, if you're looking at something, it might cover a fiscal year, it might cover an academic year, one may include a summer term, one may not. So it did take a bit longer than we anticipated to be able to come up with what would be the most accurate baseline to give you an example of where we started so that we can then more accurately reflect the growth and the progression. So it's been a very exciting process, and I've appreciated the team working on it. So we will have it on the agenda for the upcoming June meeting. We took some feedback from that first meeting. I know the chair talked about maybe some benchmarks. You know, we might have a goal that's a year out, but what should we be looking for quarterly to make sure that we're tracking to be where we need to be? So that we've taken all that feedback. We'd like to get more at the upcoming meeting and continue to sort of revise this so that you'll know what's coming forward at these meetings. And as Trustee Kane said, there'll be much more reporting done at the committee level. So that will be a different list of metrics that you'll see.
And I would just add one more thing, which is I also want to add my thanks to Carolyn and Jeff, who have been taking a lot of feedback from a lot of places to land us where we are, and have done it with great joy and good humor. So thank you.
There. Vice Chancellor St. John, do you have anything to add to this piece?
One example for the trustees of the plan for the plans document that Trustee Kane was describing. So we have a number of goals in the plan that entail a plan for their completion, if that makes sense. And trustees Alexander and Riley have very helpfully and rightly said, we need to see a coordinating document that shows that we have those goals with plans identified, and we need to be able to track where we are on fulfilling those plans. Just one example. So there's a goal in the strategic plan for academic program reviews. Typically, universities review each of their programs every 5 to 7 years. If you are a program that responds to an external accreditor like CAPE or ABET or a social work accreditor, it's built in because you must go through your timed review or else your accreditation is imperiled. But if you're in a humanities department or some of our social sciences department, they tend not to respond to external accreditors. And so over time, if a chair is ill or the department has something else going on, or it's a tight budget time, or they're hiring, or whatever it is, there can be slippage over time. So one of the goals that we had not yet established any forward motion on yet was around that program review work. So after the meeting on the 9th, I went to the provost at our very next chief academic officers meeting and said, we have some catch up to do here, and was happy to discover there's work underway. Farmington just did this comprehensively over the past year. I know that President Edmondson and her team are planning to do a program review initiative in the coming year. And Provost Vollen and Associate Provost Paquette are midway through this process at Orono as of right now. And so I have a note to go out to the other provosts. We'll collect all the information. We'll figure out what our dates and deadlines are, and then issue a report through Trustee Kane and the Strategic Planning Committee to update all the trustees in this area. There are many more areas like that, but we want to do it in a very comprehensive way, item by item, plan by plan, deadline by deadline, keeping the trustees apprised of where we are. And as we do that, we help the presidents understand what's going on. I think globally across the system, we help the chancellor understand what's going on across the system, and we keep ourselves on track.
I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have at this time, but I think what I would like to end this piece with is that I encourage you to look at the materials that are in Diligent, and if you are able to attend the June Strategic Planning Committee meeting, where we will discuss each of the KPIs again, the baselines, the rationale, the metrics. It will be a good discussion, and we appreciate all your feedback.
Questions, comments? Seen way back when the faculty senate was a million years ago, they had a committee on committees, which I thought was pretty funny. But now we have a plan on
the plan.
So
Yes,
good.
If you'd like, I can move to tab 11 while I'm here. Okay. So you have all been presented with information on a collective bargaining agreement for the police, the Fraternal Order of Police. It's a tentative agreement that is before you. It outlines a 2-year contract, and it discusses in the agreement salary increases as well as changes to their benefits around dependent tuition waiver. And I believe you've reviewed the material. We discussed it yesterday, so up to you for a vote.
Yeah, great. Any questions? Seeing none, I'll read the resolution that the Board of Trustees authorizes the Chancellor to execute the collective bargaining agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police Lodge Number 100 upon notice that the agreement has been ratified by the union. Do I have a motion? Moved by Trustee Kane, seconded by Trustee Michaud. All those in favor? All those opposed? Trustee Eames?
Yes.
Great, motion passes. Thank you. Carolyn, anything else?
No, that's it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And now we'll move back to our agenda and ask Jeff to step up in his report.
While there we go. I just broke the microphone. So I was reminded this morning that President McDonald is a fan of brevity. So this anecdote will be brief, but I do need to say, 2 days before the Star Wars themed commencement at UMPI, I was on the phone with Trustee Kane prepping for the meeting on May 9th. And she was confiding in me in top secrecy about her plans with President Rice for the commencement. And while we were on the phone, her package arrived in the mail containing her Princess Leia wig. She was more excited about that than she was about prepping for the Strategic Planning Committee. I mean, that was clear to me at the point. 2 days later, not having an obligation to attend the commencements, I was driving down Route 1 in Wells with my wife and daughter, minding my own business in Southern Maine, and I get a text from Trustee Kane with no words, just a photo, and it's Trustee Kane in a Princess Leia wig standing next to some guy who I didn't recognize right away. So I kind of held the phone out, and it was disturbing, so I put it away, and then I took the phone back up, and I realized it was President Rice in a blonde wig. I mean, I had the experience of the Ken themed, Mark Hamill. I just want to say it was traumatizing, and And I've had my fill of Star Wars themed commencements. I'm happy that it went so well at UMPI, but it was very alarming to be on my own time to get that text. And there we go. All right. That's all I have.
Expected to keep up with this.
Well, there is a photograph you could share.
There we go. So I'll be brief today, trustees. Again, keeping my promise to President McDonald. So all the trustees know, and I'll very quickly, last summer, the chancellor and I sat down initially with Vice Chancellors Dorsey and Lowe, and then very quickly with Vice Chancellor Freeney Mundy as well. And we took a look at adult degree completion and the dollars that you saw a minute ago from Vice Chancellor Lowe's presentation that the state appropriates for that purpose in our budget. And we were looking to ramp up adult degree completion initiatives across our universities, and in particular, move more of those dollars out to the universities where we think they belong as quickly as possible. So each of the presidents last summer and fall, with one exception, and I'll return to that in just a moment, put forward a proposal which we reviewed and which we funded to develop a new suite of adult degree completion initiatives, including staffing, recruitment, marketing, and other kinds of support for adult learners in an effort to grow enrollment and to attract some of those many thousands of Maine adults who have some credits or some progress toward a credential of value, but didn't complete it when they first started. The one exception is the law school, and I think actually President Softly and I are within a week or so of finalizing a plan for an adult degree completion initiative out of that entity as well. So we're excited about that. The one other preface I'll say before moving into the slides is that you won't see too many examples here from Presque Isle, and there's a reason for that. President Rice and his team have already been doing this work for several years through the CBE effort. Everything I'm about to share with you here is something that's really been built into the work of staffing the CBE initiative and the team and the outreach that they do. So that's well underway at that university so far. So if I read slides to the trustees, I'll be shattering Trustee McMahon's faith in me, so I will not read the slides. I'll simply point to them. But I will say a couple things about this slide here. One thing that we have learned from Presque Isle and the competency-based initiative through the Your Pace program is that, and I've heard Ray say this several times, adult learners need and want a human point of contact. So one of the first things that all the universities have done or are in the process of doing is hiring someone to be the primary face of adult degree completion at their universities. Some of our universities have already had this person, but some of them have chosen to reorganize or rearrange the staffing pattern to better meet the new initiatives that they're working on, which is wonderful. But it's really important that we have staff who can become the face of this initiative. For returning adults, some of whom have been away from our universities 10 or 20 or 30 years, trying to come back can be bewildering. It can be intimidating. And we think having humans attached to these programs that are informed, but also friendly and encouraging it makes a crucial difference for this work. So that's really the first thing. And in addition, you'll notice University of Southern Maine actually staffed up for this. So they engaged in a training that would help the staff who will be working in this area do what they do better in relation to the new initiatives that are being launched at that university. So we've seen a combination of hiring and development that's been really positive to date. The universities have marketed in all kinds of ways, and I'll only say two things about this. The first is that Blaze Media Marketing Campaign, that's the Blaze marketing group based in Yarmouth. That's not the Blaze restaurant group. No cheeseburger is connected to this initiative in any way. The second thing I'll say is with respect to the last bullet, and I know trustees know this, especially those of you who have ties to the business world, but in adult degree completion, websites are meant to be active attractors, not passive places where people can go and peruse. Maryland Global, Arizona State, all of the major vendors out there started with massive, intensive website upgrades or wholesale redesigns in order to make their websites as interactive as possible, as simple as possible for adult learners, as attractive as possible for adult learners. And we've seen that already at several of our universities, and more work like that to come, of a real effort to turn the first thing most adult learners see, which is a website or a link through a text or a digital ad to a website, into something that makes them want to learn more and hear more, and that is instantly interactive with them in all the ways that we're trying to be interactive. Academic enhancements and initiatives. I think the main thing to say here is really that we are trying to move fully online with as many of these programs as we can, as quickly as we can. There are certainly arguments to be made in some cases for low residency programming, but given the geography of our state and where the population of our state is arrayed, we think in most cases, fully online programs are the way to go for most of our adult degree completion endeavors. And we've seen the universities moving toward that. The provosts continue to bring forward programs for modality changes from face-to-face to online at a regular clip. And I think we'll only see more of that coming up in the future. On the academic side of it, I would just say that all of this work, including the pathway work at Fort Kent and related work on the academic side, is designed to reach these learners where they are, and designed to be as encouraging and as attractive to them as possible in bringing them forward to our universities. And my last slide is, I hope, fairly straightforward. I just want to say a couple of things about this. The first is that one thing we're learning through this, and the national literature bears this out, is that first-time, full-time students bring themselves, and in some cases, our universities have been successful in creating what enrollment managers would call pipelines, or what they might also call job security, where they're able to go out and find a steady source of students coming from one high school in-state or out-of-state, or one region in-state or out-of-state, and really begin moving students into their university year over year. Adult learners are different in the sense that they often have coworkers who also have partial, have earned some credits but never earned a credential. They may have extended family. They may have adult children of their own. All that to say, we think that our adult learners cast a wider net behind them, and maybe bringing more people to us. I think we've seen some early evidence of that through the Your Pace program, and I think we'll see more evidence of that. I always feel like whenever we're doing something new, I have to come to the board and say that the chancellor said X would happen, and then it ended up happening. But this is true again. When we had our first conversation about this, I laid out what I wanted to do, and the chancellor said, okay, so some of these people will come back and do a one-off. They'll take a class and they'll go away. And I said, well, yes, but we want them to come back and stay. And he said, well, the ones that come and formally enter a degree program will go through a transfer evaluation process. And I said, yes. And he said, okay, so those people are going to transfer in. We're going to see an increase in transfer activity because they're coming in through our transfer process and they're bringing people behind them. And we have some very, very early evidence that we'll be tracking heavily over the next several months and into the next years that bears that out. We do think that's going to be the case, that our transfer pool is going to widen and deepen as a function of the work that the presidents and their teams are doing in this area at our universities. The last thing I want to say is quickly, both names have been changed and some of the details have been changed to protect the privacy of students. But when I asked the presidents to ask someone at their universities to share updates, which is where all of this comes from, I got one from UMF and one from UMA that I especially wanted to share, and they're representative of what's happening everywhere. So this is not to exclude any other university, but we have a student at UMF who was just about one class away from graduating almost 20 years ago, and had some family responsibilities come forward and was unable to finish. And through the new adult degree completion initiatives that President McDonald has launched at his university, the student came back, had a review of prior credit, review of the transcript, took one more class, completed her degree, and is now enrolled in a master's degree program at University of Maine at Farmington, which is transformative for her family in all kinds of ways. And then at the University of Maine at Augusta, we have a nursing student who was experiencing some personal difficulties, some difficulty just managing life with a family and while progressing toward a nursing degree, and with some timely student services support intervention from staff at UMA, was able to stay in the program and is moving toward earning her degree now. And there are examples like this across our system. There will be more in the coming months and years thanks to this work. So I get the privilege of having done very little here except collect the updates and share them with you. But the work that the universities are doing is going to change lives for the better for adult Mainers looking to come back, develop new skills, complete a degree, or move forward with some other educational venture. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions the trustees may have.
Questions? Good news. Trustee Cates.
Just a comment, Jeff. And I know we're going to be working on a marketing plan for the system. And as you're talking about the very successful marketing that each of the campuses is apparently doing on adult completion, it'd be good to have a conversation about where the effort ought to lie. Is this a system marketing effort that the system could be saying, you're out there throughout the state of Maine, you may only have a few credits to go. There's 7 opportunities out there to complete that. And it's more of a concentrated statewide effort as opposed to a individual campus effort. I don't know what the right answer is, but as we begin to develop a marketing plan, it's at least something to think about.
Thank you. We've had discussions about which of those directions to go and how, Trustee Kate. So we're working on it. All right.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff.
What would you say the size of the pool is?
It's at least 185,000 adult Mainers who have some credits but no credential, and that figure is 2 years old, so it could be larger at this point. It's a substantial number of working and retired Mainers who have earned credit somewhere inside or outside of Maine and could come back and earn a credential or a degree from us. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I ask a question, Jeff?
Oh, sorry, sure. Trustee Eames.
Yes, thanks. Is there any thought or would it even be possible to do this on a master's level? Or the law school level? Because you hear over the years, people, they get a few credits here and there, and they're unable to finish their master's or their advanced education.
We fully intend to do this. It's already happening at the graduate level in places, Trustee Eames. And as for the law school, I don't want to step out in front of President Softly because I'm afraid of her, but she has some very good ideas about what she wants to do, and we'll be talking about them soon. You'll hear about them very shortly.
Joan has an initiative as well that's related.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, we conducted a survey across the system of people who might be interested in completing doctoral degrees, who might have some work done toward a doctoral degree or interested in kind of a streamlined pathway, and had more than 400 responses from staff and faculty across the system. And just this year, UMaine convened a task force to take a look at what came in and to come forward with some proposals about what might be viable programmatic ways to address this need. Now, unclear exactly how it could fit with this adult degree completion, but at the same time, we actually have another meeting coming up next week that will be likely bringing something forward in the next couple of months.
Thank you.
Any other, is that Lisa? Okay. Any other questions? Okay, let's move on. We have tenure at time of hire, and I'll turn to President Franny Mundy.
And could I ask Colin to give this
course.
quick, John, Greg Cox. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. This was, didn't realize I was up on this, but I'm very, very happy to be here. Greg Cox is in this, we have him up for associate professor and tenure. He has been hired to run the new, well, he's replacing, I'm sorry. Yeah, Clarissa Henry, thank you. As you'll see, in his packet, he has a very deep record here. Going back, so he would be serve as the GSBSE graduate director. He was at Jack's Labs since the 90s and has a very strong record, over 80 publications. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you, Provost Volin. The resolution that the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee and approves tenure at time of hire associate professor in the Department of Molecular and Biomedical Sciences with tenure to be effective January 2nd, 2024. Motion?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Kane, seconded by Trustee Alexander. All those in favor? All those opposed? Trustee Eames?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. That moves, you continue to have the full floor, Vice Chancellor?
For the Vice Chancellor.
Yes, for the Vice Chancellor of Research and Innovation.
Morning, everybody. I have neither slides nor jokes, and I will be fairly brief. But decided to add an update because of questions about where we are with the congressionally directed spending work. And so I'll get to that in a moment, but I also want to thank those who've acknowledged the good work that is happening through a variety of collaborations, really, to continue to advance research and achievement of external funding across the system, with a lot of partnership happening across our campuses here. First of all, a thank you to all who have been involved in the congressionally directed spending, the earmarks work over the last several years. You may know that over 22, 23, and 24, we've had 48 awards totaling $128 million coming into this system. These are extraordinary numbers, and actually it's been an interesting process to watch as these start to take shape, how all of the staffs across so many areas of the system have needed to get engaged and be involved in everything from procurement to finance to programmatic development. So in fiscal year 24, there were 16 awards made at $56.6 million. Very exciting to have this. And as you know, because the federal budget came in late, these awards were announced late. Great gratitude to Senator Collins as Vice Chair of the Appropriations Committee in the Senate, as well as to Senators King and Representatives Pingree and Golden for their incredible support here. And special thanks to Sam Warren, who single-handedly in many ways led this work, particularly to get those awards proposed and entered into the system, and tremendous negotiation with the delegation and their teams. So thank you on that. Those are just now landing. So they will come in before the fiscal year ends, the federal fiscal year ending at the end of September. And so right now there's a lot of work happening across the system to do the final work of actually making those grants final. The University of Maine Office of Research Administration is available to anybody who needs any kind of advice or guidance, as well as, of course, what's happening on individual campuses. Because there can be discrepancies a little bit between what was proposed and then what the agency might ultimately be available to fund. And so that's all getting worked through right now for 24, but very, very exciting. The 25 process, we've had a shift this year in the process that has moved to the Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovations office, and has been led this year by Jake Ward, Vice President for Strategic Partnerships, Innovation, Resources, and Engagement, and Jason Charland, who is a Senior Advisor to me for research. And together, they've been working to continue to expand the good work that Sam initiated, and turn that into a wide call for ideas from across the system, which comes out early in the fall. And so we'll be back on that cycle quite soon, where the notion is for ideas to start to come together from wherever they might originate in the system. And that's the beginning then of a winnowing process, or maybe a reassignment process would be better as a description, where some of those ideas do look like they will be viable ideas for CDS. And as we've talked about before, that's kind of a matchmaking process with what accounts are available, with what dollars are available, with what our delegation members are interested in, and with what the requirements of the agencies might be. So there's a process that goes on until finally the proposals are submitted, and that happened earlier this month. And that process continues with negotiations then between Jason, Jake, others on our staff, together with the delegation staff, to try to get these matches settled in. And our members of our delegation all have slightly different priorities and emphases. And so that is ongoing right now. About 100 ideas came in different forms. Many of those ideas were not in a form that would be suited to a CDS request. But what we've committed to doing, with great support from Jason Charland and others in our Vice President for Research office at the University of Maine, is to try to find a match for any of those ideas to alternative funding pathways. So if they don't fit well to a CDS, we're trying to work to find competitive award options that people might apply to, or other possibilities, and then a lot of proposal writing assistance that we're happy to provide, but as a way of expanding everybody's capacity, that's underway right now. About 35 projects were advanced, but as I say, that's now a process in the hands of the delegation, largely with a lot of discussion with individuals. Some of these PIs will be getting calls and questions as we go. So very excited to be able to have this expansive engagement on the CDS process, and also looking for ways to connect it to our bigger capacity and success in bringing in external funding for projects that are really important to the university system and to the state of Maine and to our faculty. I'm just going to add one other note. I'm very grateful to the presidents who spent some time with me this year talking about what we called research identity for their institutions. We have 7 different institutions with different goals and expectations and capacity for engaging in research or scholarship. And I feel very grateful that I've been able to talk with each of you about what might be of the most interest for your institution and where you'd like to go, both in terms of subject matter areas where we've gotten a lot of great input, as well as the nature of the research, which I'm happy to talk about at some other time. Everything ranging from community engaged research to the scholarship of teaching and learning to bench research and kind of everything across the way, as well as basic research and applied research and experimental development. So it's a very rich portfolio when we look across, but not every institution is trying to do the same thing here, and for good reasons. So I just wanted a brief report, and we're very excited about the CDS. The record has been phenomenal, and we're hoping for more continued success. So one add-on I'd like to give, this year, the University of Maine engaged Cornerstone, which is a public government relations firm in DC, and they are working very closely with us, and they also are committed to working system-wide as needed to try to make this process as comprehensive as we can. So.
Thank you. Questions? Trustee Alexander.
This is another area that, for Vice Chancellor Lowe, where in the context of looking at budgets, it would be good to see what the stream of not only fundraising, but grant funding is allocated to offset what would otherwise be faculty time or other aspects of the university system that these grant programs help fund. That would be great to see that.
Yes. Get a little closer here. Great question. We had that actually come up a lot during the budget hearings, which is probably where you got the question. So actually been working with the Vice Chancellor to design a presentation at some point. We're just trying to find when we can fit it into the FFT agenda, where Joan and her team would come in and talk about those things that don't fit necessarily nicely into the E&G and the auxiliary budget, which is quite a lot at USM, at UMaine. So grants, contracts, all those type of things, and roll that into an education session at FFT as well.
Other questions? I think it's fair to say that the board very much appreciates all your work and the work of all the presidents, and particularly the delegation, for their support. This is really important investment.
It's exciting and important. I'll share a little bit to Trustee Alexander's question. This doesn't answer your question, but if you break out the 128.9 million that we have over the last 3 years, 89 million is in capital projects. So just that piece alone is really quite significant to the discussions we've been having about infrastructure. 15 million to R&D, what would be truly categorized by the federal government as R&D. And then education and outreach is 24.4. So those are interesting distributions. And I have been working with Vice Chancellor Lowe to think about how we present that in some useful way. So we're very grateful for the support of the board, the work of Sam Warren, and of course, in my own office, Jason Charland has just been amazing too.
Trustee Michaud had a question.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. A quick question. I know the delegation, Senator Collins, King, Pingree, Golden have been fantastic as far as the CDS funding. My question relates to, you also can apply for grants outside of the CDS process. I know yesterday we heard too with HRSA. Is that process still moving forward
yeah.
to aggressively do that as
Yeah,
well?
it's a great question, Trustee Michaud, because we can't let that slip at all. We're very, very fortunate to have the CDS. And at the same time, we are continuing to try to work very aggressively at UMaine and with faculty interested across the rest of the system to be sure that we are competing for those competitive awards. We're remembering how to write those winning proposals. The EP score that I announced yesterday was a great example. We do have HRSA awards that have come through the CDS process, and we also have competitive HRSA awards. To respond to your question yesterday, we have some of both. And I think that the trick is to be sure that the earlier career faculty are really well supported to write competitive proposals to programs that they might not even be aware of. So that's a lot of what UMaine's Office of Research Development does, is to try to match RFPs and opportunities with faculty interests and put together teams. And that's an interesting observation because we can't let ourselves get dependent on the CDS, even though we are having such striking success because of our delegation. Yeah.
I appreciate that very much because it is more competitive when you go for the grant versus the
Right.
CDS. And I don't want to take advantage of the delegation because they have been excellent. And
Amazing.
who knows if these will continue depending on the makeup of
Very,
Congress.
very
So,
grateful. But even at some level, working to get these CDSs landed requires experience in grant writing that we don't necessarily have in as widespread a way as we need. So that needs to continue.
yep, thank you.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. Other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
Continued good luck. We are doing a great on our agenda, so we're going to keep cranking and be done by lunch for our scenic drive around the state. Let me turn it to Trustee McMahon, election of board officers.
The nominating committee, which consisted of Trustee Kane, Trustee Flood, and Trustee Martin, met by email and determined a 2-week window for nominations for board officers. At the close of the 2-week nomination period, we had a self-nomination from Chair Riley, a self-nomination from Vice Chair Marchese, and nominations for Chair and Vice Chair from 2 independent trustees, and they both nominated Chair Riley and Vice Chair Marchese. The nominating committee met and voted unanimously to recommend to the board that Trish Riley serve another term as chair and Lisa Marchese serves another term as vice chair. And I bring that as a motion to the Board of Trustees.
This is always a fun time. Could I have a second? Seconded. Seconded by Trustee Flood. And any comments, questions? All those in favor? All those opposed? Hey, Lisa, are you voting?
I don't think I'm supposed to vote.
I don't think so. Thank you all very, very much. It's really
But I can
appreciated.
thank everyone. Thank you.
And I especially want to thank Lisa Eames for being a great vice chair. It's just terrific. And thank you all.
Thank you,
have,
Trish. It's a pleasure to work with you and with everyone.
we have our work cut out for us in the year ahead, and I look forward to continuing to work with everybody. And we'll be talking about committees next and membership. So more on that. Thank you. Tab 13 is student representatives. We have brought this back into the main agenda so that we can get a little sense of each of these students. And could I start with President Edmondson?
You bet. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you Camille Alipo. Camille is a sophomore, well, just finished her second year at the University of Southern Maine as a leadership and organizational studies major. I first met Camille a little over a year ago when we had a reception at the President's House for the women who are alumni of the Olympia Snow Leadership Program, which Camille is one. And she was instrumental in helping us to begin the first Olympia Snow Leadership Alumni Chapter at the University of Southern Maine. She also was in my class for 2 semesters, so I know her very well. I'm thrilled that she'll have this leadership opportunity here. And if you are in Portland for the Portland Ballet ever, you can see Camille dancing. She is one of the Portland Ballet company members, so we're really proud of her.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you. We'll hold our applause and move through. We have a law nominee. President Softly.
Yes, I have 2 points to make. One, Divya Singaram, who was actually an official trustee member, had to resign to go to the internship, as you indicated, at Ibero in Mexico, and had a wonderful internship. She is back. She is employed here in Maine, and she sends her best to everybody. And in keeping with the peripatetic members of the Maine Law Group, we put forward Tyler Davis, who is a rising 2L.
Thanks, Mary. Woke us right up.
Darkness falls. Tyler is a flex student who comes to Maine Law after actually 11 years in business. And he graduated from Lafayette College in 2013. He has worked in renewable energy project management. He has also worked on energy policy for years. He's going to be a terrific member of this group, but this week he is traveling to Ireland, and I promise he will be back for the next meeting.
And am I the only one that isn't sure what flex is?
Flex students allows law students who are employed and are coming in a little bit at a time before they do the full program to begin. And so we are actually bringing in a lot of non-traditional students through the Flex program.
Great, great. And last but not least, UMA.
Yes, I'm
President.
delighted to introduce UMA student
No,
Grace
no, we
Mills to
don't.
the board.
Oh.
Grace enrolled in the vet tech program at
Yes.
UMA Bangor in 2020. And although she began her studies at the height of the pandemic, she's one of our most engaged and present students. She's worked in student life since her first year and has served as a peer coach to TRIO students. She's been involved in SGA since her sophomore year and has served as president of both the Bangor Student Government Association and chair of the UMA-wide Student General Assembly. Her service to UMA is clear, especially to the students as they elected her as UMA's representative to the Board of Trustees. Her choice of vet tech is clearly a good one, as she is not afraid to approach wild animals. She's taken care of an owl, played with a raccoon, and while in Israel, she approached wild dogs. Upon graduation, she hopes to continue her education either in leadership or animal science. And we're delighted to have Grace.
Great. And we have Griffin Goins as well, who's our new graduate student rep, who I think we approved last meeting.
I wasn't at last meeting, but you may have.
We did, we did, and welcome from the University of Maine School, Graduate School. And let me ask all our new student reps to stand, and thank you very much for your willingness to serve. And Alec has been around forever now, so you're always welcome. Okay, great. Thank you very much. I think that brings us to the consent. Nope, it doesn't. Oh, yeah. That the Board of Trustees approves the appointment of the student representatives to the Board of Trustees as presented. Do I have a motion? Moved by Trustee Michaud, seconded by Trustee Flood. All those in favor? All those opposed? Trustee Eames?
Yes.
Great, welcome officially. Okay, now the consent agenda. Trustee Eames.
Thank you. I move for the Board of Trustees to approve the consent agenda items, acceptance of the minutes and the items as forwarded from the May 6, 2024 Academic and Student Affairs Committee. The consent agenda items are tabs 14 through 17 in the meeting materials. Could I have a second?
seconded by trustee Martin.
Thank you. All those in favor? And I'll vote yes. Any opposed?
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have concluded our agenda in record time. Thank you so much. What? Did we skip something? I've skipped around so much, it's highly possible. What's Barbara?
It was on, yeah,
We did that already?
yes.
I think we've
And
got everything.
consent.
We did.
Let me, there has been some confusion. There will be a public, a 2-day meeting in July at the University of Maine. We will be able to stay at the new Hotel Ursa, which will be a great opportunity. And on that Monday morning, President Friedy Mundy, Trustee McCarthy and Trustee Landry have been helping us get ready to understand AI better. And there'll be a presentation at 8 in the morning. Owen, do you want to say any more about that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Riley. We've been working this, obviously we know that AI is impacting a lot of what we do in society and generally. And our initial intent for this session is really education, to talk about sort of the building blocks of what's happened, where we're at, and not to jump to major conclusions about what's going on. But we've asked Prashant Chandrasekhar, who's the CEO of Stack Overflow and a UMaine alum, to come in and speak about how he has changed his business as it relates to AI. And he's a dynamic speaker and he knows a lot about it. And also Dr. Peter Schilling, who just confirmed this morning, actually will join. And he works at the University of Maine and talks a lot about how AI is used in instruction. And that will be a kickoff to maybe a few presentations we're going to do around AI, not at all at board meetings, but in a series of things. Because, as you can see, it's a general purpose technology, the first one probably since the internet that's come out, that's changing a lot about how things operate. And we need to just kind of get to a point where we all are speaking the same language to then understand what that means as the future of the institution.
Right. Thank you. And we are well aware there's enormous undertaking every university. This is an attempt to get the board ready to understand better what you'll be bringing to us. And so hopefully we'll get up to snuff and be able to figure out that it really isn't that A1 sauce.
But slide one, that's slide one.
Could you confirm the date and place?
The date is July 14th and 15th, University of Maine.
Thank you.
So at 8 a.m. And we hope that's, the presidents and others will participate actively in that AI as we try to educate ourselves and to experience Hotel Ursa. So great. Anything else for the good of the university system? They are going to expedite lunch. It's shocking to me that we got through this agenda this rapidly. So thank you all very, very much. And thank you to all our representatives for being here. And we look forward to seeing you in July. No, we don't need a motion to conclude. We are concluded. Thank you. Bada bing, bada boom.
Bye, everyone. Safe travels.